Corey Travis Micciolo. He liked the solar system. He liked to play outside. His mom describes him as silly and happy. Corey was 6 on April 2nd, 2021, when his father murdered him. His father is this defendant, Christopher Gregor. This case is about Corey and how Corey became the ultimate victim of this defendant's punishment and abuse. During the course of the trial, you're going to hear from a number of witnesses and see a lot of evidence. You'll learn that on May 1st of 2014, Corey was born to Brianna Micciolo when she was just 17 years old. This defendant didn't come into Corey's life, and neither did the Gregors, until Corey was 4 or 5. Back in March of 2021, Corey's parents hadn't been together, but they shared custody. Corey lived with the defendant, and his mom had visitation. On March 20th of 2021, Corey's mom picked him up for a visit. They went to Pennsylvania, and they saw their family. They were supposed to be back at about 3 or 4 o'clock. They were in Pennsylvania, there was traffic, and they were running late. Corey's mom told the defendant that. But Brianna's lateness, you'll hear, was pissing him off. He told Brianna to drop Corey off at the apartment complex's gym and meet him there. So she did. Corey and the defendant went into the gym, and you'll see what happened next. Because that gym had a surveillance system, and you will see what this defendant did to his son inside that gym. After that day, when Corey went back to school during the week, his teacher, his first grade teacher, started to notice some bruises on Corey. She was concerned. She's going to tell you that after March 25th of 2021, Corey was never physically back in person in school ever again. During this time, Corey's mom was also concerned. She had seen bruises as well. She was so concerned that she filed an emergent application with the court to get custody. On April 1st of 2021, Corey's mom picked him up for her only visitation she had had that week, or during the week, which was 3 hours, and she brought him to a pediatrician. Corey spoke to the pediatrician. The pediatrician saw Corey's bruises. She too was concerned. So she sent Corey and his mom to a local hospital nearby. Ultimately, Corey was seen at Jersey Shore University Medical Center. And while at Jersey Shore, doctors looked at Corey's body. They checked his lungs. They checked his bones. They checked his labs. And shortly after 1 o'clock in the morning, or around there, Corey was discharged. He was medically cleared for release because there was nothing wrong with Corey's lungs. There was nothing wrong with Corey's bones, and his labs were normal. Corey was fine except for his bruises. Now, Corey's mom tried to bring Corey back to the defendant. Her visitation was over, and while they were at the doctor earlier, she learned that her application for custody had been denied in that regard, but that a child abuse examination had been ordered within 7 days by a specialist. And so, in trying to keep with the visitation schedule, she contacted the defendant and tried to bring Corey back. But he didn't answer. And so since it's after 1 o'clock in the morning, Corey's mom and Corey go back to her house in Englishtown. And the two of them get home, everyone's asleep, they go in the basement, and they go to bed. That's where her room is. Corey wakes up in the morning, he has his breakfast, his mom dresses him in clean clothes, and he's with his mom the whole time. And she drives him back to the defendant's apartment in Barnegat. Corey and his mom sat in the car in the parking lot, and they said goodbye for what would be the very last time. Corey was walking. Corey was talking. Corey was fine, except for his bruises. By 9:03 a.m., Corey was back inside the defendant's apartment. And you'll hear that the defendant wasn't happy. But he told people, Corey's okay, Corey's all right. Except by 3:48 p.m., this defendant carried Corey's nearly limp body into Southern Ocean Medical Center. He reported that Corey was sleepy and had thrown up. Corey was admitted quickly. He was brought to room 6 in the emergency department. Corey coded. He was intubated. He coded again. He lost his pulse. And by 5:03 p.m., Corey was pronounced dead. This defendant, shortly after, walked out of the hospital, got into his car, and he left. Left the hospital, and he left Corey. You're going to hear from witnesses in this case that will tell you that defendant was found in Tennessee on April 4th. Now, a forensic pathologist that reviewed Corey's autopsy and his medical records is going to testify. He's a doctor. And he will tell you that Corey was a once healthy 6-year-old boy that died from blunt force trauma. He will describe for you the contusions on Corey's body all over in different stages of healing. He will tell you that the inflammatory response throughout Corey's body was acute. He's going to describe that Corey's heart and liver were both lacerated. Now, what you won't hear is that Corey was struck with a bat, stomped on by the defendant. You're not going to hear that. Because the only people there in that apartment were the defendant and Corey. But what you will hear is that the only people that were in that apartment were the defendant and Corey. And that the serious bodily injury that Corey sustained while with the defendant, and only the defendant, were so catastrophic that they ended his life. Now, there are 2 charges in this case. The first, endangering the welfare of a child, and the second, murder. The state must prove both beyond a reasonable doubt. That means you're firmly convinced, and that's a burden the state embraces. That first count, endangering the welfare of a child, is for what this defendant did to Corey in the gym on May 20th, 2021. And that second count is for what this defendant did to Corey on April 2nd, 2021. That's the murder. In order to prove a murder, the state has to demonstrate that a defendant acted purposely or knowingly. But rarely is there a person that can come into court and tell you what someone was thinking when they engaged in a particular act. So how do we prove that to you? We have to look at all the things the defendant was doing before, during, and after those crimes. Now, an expert in digital forensics will testify, and he'll tell you that he examined the defendant's cell phone. And from the defendant's cell phone, he was able to learn that throughout the day on April 2nd, 2021, the defendant was texting with a female associate making plans for that night. On that same date, 3 hours before Corey died, he took a selfie with Corey on the couch. He also ordered McDonald's during that afternoon, and he did a search on his phone for loss of consciousness, sleepy, and nauseous. You're going to have information before you, and I'd ask you to consider it, about what this defendant was doing all day, at home, at the hospital, after he left. What he was saying to the people at the hospital, to Corey's mom, and everyone else. His texts, his phone calls, his web searches, his selfie, even his garbage. I'm going to ask that you pay attention to all of that. And when you do that, please pay attention to what's happening to Corey that day, that afternoon. On April 2nd, 2021, when Corey was brought back to his father, he vomited. He defecated in his pants, and his body was slowly shutting down. Consider what the defendant's doing while you consider what's happening to Corey. There were a lot of people in Corey's life, and you'll hear about some of them. Some might be positive, and some might not. But don't let that derail you. You all came here to serve as jurors in this case with everything that you need. And those are your life experiences and your common sense. Use it. Corey was alive and well at 9 a.m. when he was with his mom, and he was gone by 5:03 p.m. after only being with his father, this defendant. The state submits that after you've heard and seen all of the evidence in this case, you will be firmly convinced that this defendant is guilty of abuse and murder. Because healthy 6-year-olds don't just die during the course of a business day, and neither did Corey Micciolo.